We're a pure play battery metals company. We have the most advanced lithium hard rock project in Manitoba, in Canada. Manitoba is centrally located in Canada. And we certainly feel, from a value proposition perspective, that we're amongst the most undervalued lithium development companies based on a EV to resource ton basis. Snow Lake has entered into an MOU with LG Energy Solutions to look at the development of a lithium hydroxide plant in Manitoba. Manitoba is ideally positioned geographically to supply the burgeoning EV and battery market in North America. We have just announced back in October a preliminary economic assessment, and basically that justifies further development of the project. We're also into our second year of environmental baseline data collection. That's important once you get into the nitty gritty as to how you actually put a lithium mine into production. That is critical for permitting, and I'll speak briefly about that as well. I think one of the catalysts and one of the most intriguing things about Snow Lake is we have a very large land package. We have about 59,000 acres. Only 1% of that has been explored to date. And so far, we have an initial resource of about 8.2 million tons, grading about 1% lithium oxide.
Welcome, everybody, to Wall Street Reporters at Discovery Day live stream for today, October 4th, 2023. We're introducing a brand new company today, Snow Lake Resources, LITM on NASDAQ, and Frank Wheatley, the CEO. Frank, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Jack.
Frank, so this live stream is where we introduce companies to investors, stocks that are at an inflection point with multiple catalysts for upside potential, for multi-bagger upside potential. And definitely Snow Lake is in that position right now. The stock is obviously deeply undervalued. We're going to be talking about that later today. I think it's a very, very compelling situation. And it's one of the few battery metals companies listed on NASDAQ, which I think is an incredible opportunity. I think there's only two battery metals companies, lithium companies on NASDAQ. And again, lithium this is the fuel for the EV boom. Without lithium, we're not going to have electric vehicles. So this is a pure play on a generational mega trend. So it's very exciting. And so the format for today is I'm going to turn this over to Frank to do a quick presentation, a PowerPoint presentation, and then we're going to come back with some Q&A. Hopefully we have some great audience questions, and makes these live streams special. It's really those audience questions. Everybody, please make sure to ask your questions, and we look forward to getting Frank's answers. Okay, so Frank, with that said, I'm gonna turn this over to you, and I will see you in a couple of minutes.
Okay. Are you going to pull up the presentation?
Yeah, here we
I
go.
can click
Let me just
through
get
that.
this on the screen. Okay, and I'm going to disappear for a little bit.
Okay. Welcome, everyone, and thank you for making the time to listen to this presentation. As Jack mentioned, I'm Frank Wheatley. I'm the new CEO of Snow Lake Lithium. We believe that Snow Lake Lithium is one of those businesses that is set to benefit from the transition to electric vehicles, both globally as well as North America, and particularly in the US. Snow Lake may be a name that's not familiar to you. There has been a little bit of chaos in the company over the past year that has resulted in a new board of directors and new management, and myself coming on board as the new CEO. So I think what you're going to see is a little more presence from Snow Lake, certainly in the investor relations areas. I think there's a lot of good work being done at Snow Lake. I think there's a lot of catalysts as far as things that we can see down the road. And I think our value proposition is really twofold or threefold, actually. We're a pure play battery metals company. We have the most advanced lithium hard rock project in Manitoba, in Canada. Manitoba is centrally located in Canada. And we certainly feel, from a value proposition perspective, that we're amongst the most undervalued lithium development companies based on a EV to resource ton basis. I think that's the introduction. Just quickly, there's the wonderful forward-looking statements disclaimer. Recent developments, as you may know, Snow Lake has entered into an MOU with LG Energy Solutions to look at the development of a lithium hydroxide plant in Manitoba. I will talk a little bit more about the battery supply chain further on, but Manitoba is ideally positioned geographically to supply the burgeoning EV and battery market in North America. We have just announced back in October a preliminary economic assessment, and basically that justifies further development of the project. And I'll talk about the next steps for what we're going to be doing. We're also into our second year of environmental baseline data collection. That's important once you get into the nitty gritty as to how you actually put a lithium mine into production. That is critical for permitting, and I'll speak briefly about that as well. I think one of the catalysts and one of the most intriguing things about Snow Lake is we have a very large land package. We have about 59,000 acres. Only 1% of that has been explored to date. And so far, we have an initial resource of about 8.2 million tons, grading about 1% lithium oxide. Again, we're a lithium development company. We have 2 lithium projects up in northern Manitoba, which, as I indicated, are the most advanced lithium development projects in Manitoba. Covered some of that. I think one of the themes that we want to talk about is the whole EV transition. You might have noticed that there's the US legislation, the IRA Act. Obviously, that wants to create a domestic battery supply chain. And we feel that Snow Lake is ideally situated in Canada to be a participant in that battery supply chain. Canada has also introduced critical mineral policies. The federal government of Canada and each of the provinces of Manitoba, Ontario, Quebec have also introduced critical mineral policies. And those all contain lithium as one of the critical minerals. And those policies are designed to facilitate the production of raw materials of these critical minerals, which feeds into the battery supply chain. One of the pillars of that strategy is to streamline the permitting so new mines of lithium, nickel, or other critical minerals can be brought into production much more quickly than they have in the past. Just looking at where we are, as I say, we've completed our preliminary economic assessment on both of our deposits, which are called the Thompson Brothers and the Grass River projects. The updated mineral resource estimate was included. We completed 25,000 meters of drilling in the 22-23 winter drill campaign. Only 20,000 meters of that was included in the updated resource estimate, which was in the PEA. The balance of the 6,000 meters was delayed due to delays in getting the assay results. But as we move into the fall this year, there's 3 things we're going to be doing. We're going to be initiating a pre-feasibility study. We're going to be undertaking another winter drill campaign, and we're going to continue the environmental baseline. Just talking about the drill campaign and the potential upside, both of the deposits, the Thompson Brothers and the Grass River deposits, are open along strike and at depth. So the winter drill program is intended to test the extensions of those deposits, both along strike and at depth. Obviously, we hope to increase the tons. But as I indicated earlier, the intriguing thing is of the 59,000 acre property, we've only actually explored 1% of it. So not necessarily in this winter drill program, but we're going to undertake a regional exploration program to see if we can uncover additional lithium targets on the project. We have a fairly simple capital structure. As you may know, we were IPO'd back in November 2021. We have a fairly tight structure, but we believe we're trading at a significant discount to certainly our peers. And this, from our perspective, is probably the most important slide in the deck. This is what I indicated earlier, that we feel that we're amongst the most undervalued lithium development companies on an EV per resource ton basis. And again, I'll emphasize the point that we're the most advanced lithium development project in Manitoba. We are moving into a pre-feasibility study, as I indicated, and we're into our second year of environmental baseline. We have multiple spodumene-bearing pegmatite dikes, which typically appear in clusters. Of our initial mineral resource estimate, 89% of it is in the measured and indicated categories. Part of our drilling program this winter will be to increase the confidence in that with some infill drilling. We'll also do some additional geotechnical drilling and some additional metallurgical drilling as well. Just commenting on the pre-feasibility study for a moment, that's the next stage of development. That will include the updated resource estimates that will incorporate the 2023-24 winter drill program. It'll have updated capital cost, updated operating costs. It'll have an optimized process flow sheet and updated project economics as well. Again, we've been through the PEA. The PEA had very robust numbers for a PEA, post-tax NPV of just north of $1 billion, post-tax IRR of 170%. Essentially, we looked at the PEA as justification that this Snow Lake lithium project is viable from an economic basis as a standalone lithium project. We feel that we are ideally located in Manitoba. We are in a historical mining jurisdiction. There's been mining activities for more than 100 years up in the Snow Lake region. Hudbay currently operates the Lawler mine, and further north, Valley operates the T3 mine as well. We're close to infrastructure, given obviously Hudbay and Valley's operations in the area. We do have power running across the bottom of the property. We will need to bring power in, but we're only between 10 and 15 kilometers away from rail, power, truck, etc. So we believe we're ideally located. There's also a railway north to Churchill and Hudson Bay, which opens a potential gateway to supply product to Europe as well as North America. Been through the geology briefly. Again, I think from a battery metals perspective, and certainly the EV transition, certainly the initiatives underway in the United States and in Canada, we are ideally positioned to ultimately provide lithium to the multiple EV battery facilities that are being produced. Here's just a quick slide that shows a number of the gigabattery factories that are being developed in the US. Ultimately, they are going to need a supply of lithium. And Canada is very fortunate to have a very large natural resource base, multiple opportunities for lithium. I think, Jack, that's a quick overview. If there are questions, happy to answer questions.
Yes, absolutely. Let's get into the questions here. We got a couple of questions here. Okay, first question. Sheikh is asking, I think the question is, do you own 100% of the project? Does it still
Yes.
own 100%? Okay.
We own 100% of the project, correct.
Okay. And when you're talking, I guess maybe the question was about like LG. So they're involved. That's from the processing standpoint, not in the project, correct?
That is for what we call lithium refining. Snow Lake is looking at mining lithium and producing a lithium spodumene concentrate. What happens with the spodumene concentrate is it then needs to be refined into lithium metal that the battery manufacturers can use. Right now, probably 99% of the lithium refining capacity is based in China. And one of the imports of all of these critical mineral strategies, the IRA, is to develop lithium refining capacity in North America. Without that piece, North America will not be able to build out its own domestic battery supply chain. So that is a critical thing. LG is looking at potentially a lithium hydroxide plant somewhere in Manitoba. Tanco Mine, which has been operating the only underground lithium mine in Canada for the past 50 years, has also announced that they're looking at developing a lithium hydroxide plant somewhere in Manitoba, location yet to be determined. Those would be two refining capacities that would dovetail into the North America battery supply chain, which is largely absent right now.
If you're enjoying this video, make sure to click that like and subscribe button to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Also get the notifications to get updates on all our latest videos. And of course, make sure you get a copy of my #1 bestseller book, 10 Bagger Blueprint, #1 bestseller on Amazon. Gives you my proven framework, the proven system for finding stocks that can go up 10x to 100x. Now look, I've created over $1 trillion in wealth for investors over the course of the last 25 years. And this book gives you that proven framework, a proven 10-step system for finding those stocks which can go 10x to 100x. It tells you the signals to look for, when to get in, when to get out. It goes into fundamentals, technicals, charts, all the stuff that you need. So again, 10 Bagger Blueprint on Amazon, and here's to your 100x. Okay. SB is asking, can you, I guess he's asking, how do you compare to Pontax, which
Sorry, not familiar with Pontax.
okay. Oh, I think, he's talking about, it's one of the projects in Quebec. It's a different company. It's another
Okay.
lithium stock in
There
Quebec.
are a fair number of lithium companies in Canada.
A lot. Yeah, yeah. So I think it's important to clarify for investors who might be new to the story. People are excited about battery metals. There's probably, I don't know, there's hundreds of lithium companies, right? Lithium, exploration stocks. There are very
Correct.
few. There are very few that are actually advancing, that already have a resource and are advancing towards producing mine, which is the stage you're at. I guess like how close, just in layman's terms, what's the path to becoming a revenue generating lithium mine? How long is it going to take? What's the path? And how is value going to be created along the way? Because I'm assuming that as you get closer to that point, that the gap is going to close. Because right now the stock is at $1. I guess what people want to know is, okay, what's the path? What is the path for this thing to be potentially, I don't know, a $5 stock? What needs to happen for this to be even a $3, $5 stock? What's the path to get there?
I think there's two aspects of that, Jack. One is the exploration upside we mentioned earlier. Both the deposits are open, and we've just scratched the surface of our rather large land package. That's number one. I think number two, on the actual development side, we're moving into pre-feasibility study. We're doing the environmental baseline. The pre-feasibility study should be completed next spring, early summer. It typically takes about 6 months to complete that. That will give us greater confidence in the mine plan, the project economics, which will set us up for permitting and potentially construction financing. Question whether you then move into a definitive feasibility study, which is often required for project financing. But to cut to the chase and answer your question, by next summer, we should have the results of the pre-feasibility study in hand. We should have all of our environmental baseline data collection, which will allow us to prepare the environmental impact assessment and begin the permitting process before the end of next year. Typically, we would hope, given these new critical mineral strategies and the emphasis on streamlining permitting, we would hope that we would be able to get through permitting in about a year, which would enable us to make a final investment decision and construction decision, finance, shovels in the ground, hopefully end of 2025.
Okay. Stock Sharks is asking, he's got two questions.
Okay.
Any current infrastructure questions? Okay.
Yep.
Any current partnerships with rail to transport the lithium, and the results of last night's election revenue per tax? So he's asking kind of advanced questions here.
Sure. No, that's fine. As far as the rail, no, we don't have any partnerships at this time. Given that you've got both Hud Bay and Valley up in that region of Snow Lake, there's ample rail capacity both south and north up to Churchill. As far as the Manitoba election, yes, the NDP government got in with a bit of a landslide. But we will have to see how they approach the mineral industry. But any government these days is looking for tax revenue, and the mineral industry in Canada is a very large provider of tax revenue, let alone the multiplier effect and the economic spin-off that comes from mining activities. And Manitoba is also in competition with other provinces in Canada, particularly Ontario and Quebec, if they want to be a player in the North American battery metals chain. So we are optimistic that the new government will continue the policies of the prior government.
Okay. The question, can you please explain your integrated processing strategy? Will you be an integrated lithium organization or just a mining company?
We will start as a mining company. As I indicated earlier, the lithium refining component of the battery supply chain is predominantly based in China right now. We have our MOU with LG Energy Solutions to explore the development of refining capacity in Manitoba. And as I indicated as well, Tanco has announced their intention to develop a lithium hydroxide facility. Where those discussions go between either Snow Lake and LG or Snow Lake and Tanco, we'll have to see. But our primary focus now is to become a mining company. But clearly, we have opportunities to potentially partner in the lithium refining space as well.
Okay. Any revenue projections?
At this stage, no. We've done the PEA. We'll move into the pre-feasibility study. That'll give us a much greater degree of confidence on the project economic. At that time, we'll be a little more comfortable on our revenue projections. And again, it obviously depends on price of spodumene as well. And it is a commodity and it is cyclical.
Okay. What would be the valuation with this? I'm sorry, I think, I'm not sure if I
The
understand.
1% of the property explored. We've only
Well, that's what it,
explored. Yeah,
well,
we've
I
only
think,
explored 1% of
well,
the property.
I think maybe he's asked, okay, maybe I think he's trying to ask a different question. I think maybe, I'm not sure what the question is, but what so far you've only explored 1% of this 59,000 acres, right? This is like
Correct.
nothing. I think maybe he might be asking, like, what do you see as the upside potential? If so far you have this from 1%, what if you explore another, let's call it 10%? Are you gonna have
10%.
10 times more resource? I don't fair question.
Uh,
I mean, is that crazy?
it's It's exploration. Unfortunately, you need to get boots on the ground and actually walk the ground and do the work. It would be pure speculation for me to hazard a guess on that, but there certainly is potential. That's really all we can say right now is we've scratched the surface. We have a nice initial resource and there is exploration upside potential. Until we do the work, I can't really say.
That's a lot of acreage, 59,000.
It's a
That's a
lot of
lot.
ground and it's a very
And you've only explored,
prospective area. And we've already developed 2 deposits with an initial resource.
okay, so it's promising. It's again,
It's promising.
extrapolate directly. It's not a direct
No, it's not a
extrapolation,
linear extrapolation,
a linear.
unfortunately.
Okay, stop short. He's got more questions. There might be a fourth question also. Has there been any recruiting problems for talent labor in Manitoba? And thank you for your time, Frank.
No, and the advantage of where we are up in Snow Lake, as I say, we have Hud Bay and Valley, which are large established mining operations. All of the support services are there as well. Infrastructure is there. Rail transport, truck transport, air transport is also available. We're not at the stage where we're into actually constructing a mine, so we're not looking for huge number of folks, but there certainly is the skill set and the labor force in place in Snow Lake. So again, we're fortunate that we're close to existing operations as opposed to being, say, 200 kilometers further north, where we're in the middle of, frankly, nowhere. And obviously, staff and infrastructure would be a challenge there. But we're blessed with our location in Snow Lake.
Okay. And I think one of the key things, again, for a lot of lithium investors or mining investors is the location, the ability, being close to infrastructure is, has a huge deal when you actually want to, put a mine into production. It's one thing to, find an amazing resource, but if it costs you all that money just to extract it, to transport it, to get the electricity, everything else, to find the people, it makes it, okay. So we got a question. Shaky says, can you explain slide 10? Let me see if I can pull it up here. Okay. So slide 10, can you go into detail?
So, which is,
I just had,
that's the,
is he actually, I'm not sure. Is he asking about this one, which is the comps, or is he asking about?
yeah, the
I think
numbers
he's
on the
asking about
slide.
comps. Okay, maybe we'll come back to him if he. Which one of these? Do you? Oh, actually, let me get to another question here. Okay, so how much market cap must be valued at the current PEA?
We're sitting slightly north of 20 million market cap right now. We've obviously fallen off, but I think if you look at the market generally has been soft, and certainly on the battery metal side, the market has been particularly soft. I don't know that we have been hurt more than anyone else in the battery metal space right now. But again, going back to our value proposition, we think we are relatively ideally been situated to benefit from the ultimate transition to electric vehicles, the whole EV transition, as it's called.
Yeah, it's interesting. From a
Uh,
stock perspective, do you want to do you want to bring up that slide or
nope, nope, that's fine.
okay? Yeah, I think I think it's interesting from a stock perspective. Where right around $1, that's on Nasdaq. At one point, the stock I think when it IPO'd, it was like was it 15, $17? It was a little bit crazy. And there's always there's an expression on Wall Street, which is that stocks like to go back to previous highs. It's not like a direct, but there is something to be said
Sure,
about that. We're not he's going to go back to $15 next week or any of that. There is the path has been paved beforehand. Speak, Frank. So what's okay? So in terms of, I guess what invest or if actually let me get we got Michael Mahendra in the audience. We haven't seen him in a long time. Okay. Michael is asking, will there be a battery made in any other form instead of using lithium? Is the company relying strictly based on battery making? Are you
um, there's a lot of very smart people looking at battery technologies. What I read is that at least for the foreseeable future, lithium will still be the main component part of batteries going forward. The Japanese, the Koreans, and the Chinese, a number of them are pursuing other technologies, some of them without lithium. I think, as with any technology, it's going to take a long time to commercialize that. So I think for the foreseeable future, based on what I read, lithium will still be the main component and they'll still be referred to as lithium ion batteries.
Frank, can you tell our audience a little bit about your background, your track record in terms of bringing mines into production, which is I think is very relevant with what's happening here.
Yes, I've been in the mining business for a little more than 30 years. I've got a business degree in corporate finance and a legal degree. Started off as a securities lawyer working for Canadian listed public mining companies, basically buying, selling, financing, building, and operating mines around the world, particularly in gold, copper, lithium, and potash, actually. And I've been very fortunate that I've worked with a number of management groups that have built mines on time and on budget, which is, those of you who follow the mining industry, is extremely rare. So what it comes down to is you need the right team and the right people and the right skill sets. As far as my lithium background goes, I was working with Talison Lithium out of Australia, which has the Greenbushes mine, which, as you know, is the largest, highest grade hard rock lithium deposit in the world. I was working as an executive director of Talison Lithium up until the point that Rockwood started a hostile takeover bid for Talison, and ultimately Tianqi Lithium came in and topped that bid and ultimately acquired the company. Shareholders were very happy. They made a lot of money. So I'm delighted to be back in the lithium business. I think if you look at commodities generally, what's going on in the world, I think the battery metal space is the best place to be positioned for the next decade going forward, in my personal opinion.
Yeah. It's okay. So it's very interesting. Two things. One is you have, I think, the right network, the right connections, people who you know how to find the right people who've been there and done it in terms of getting a mine into production. You have also a background. It's interesting as a securities lawyer background that could be very useful in terms of, let's say, more M&A opportunities, acquisition opportunities. Look, you're on Nasdaq, right? Which I think is one of the most compelling things about the stock right now, besides the project, from purely a stock standpoint. Because here's the thing: everybody knows that the boom, this transition to electric vehicles, it's a generational megatrend, massive opportunity, right? So how do investors put capital to work in the US? Now, Americans are not buying Canadian stock. It's very few buy Canadian stocks. It's just not the way Americans think. They like to buy stocks on Nasdaq. There's only,
Yes.
I think you're one of two Nasdaq stocks. It's a pure lithium battery metals company. So
Right.
it's I think it's going to be very interesting because it's going to be an opportunity. And one of the things that we're going to be doing is getting more eyeballs on the stock. And it's much easier to get investors to buy a NASDAQ listed stock than it is an OTC stock, a TSX, CSE, whatever it is. NASDAQ is easy. Anybody can buy a NASDAQ stock. So that makes the stock a lot more, there's a lot more upside potential for a lot more potential buyer there's basically a lot more
Of course.
potential demand that can be tapped for this pure play. And one of the reasons why the stock has been undervalued right now is, I think you talked a little bit before the company went through some turmoil internally, board things. About a year ago, there has been no investor engagement for a year. Basically, you've been off the radar. You haven't talked to institutions. You haven't done anything for a year. This is
Yeah.
like one of your first engagements with investors, like today. And I think once we get this investor engagement going, the NASDAQ thing I think is going to be very compelling, but especially in terms of, I think there's a real opportunity, and tell me if maybe give me your input. I think there's a tremendous opportunity to have base to build for you to build the number one, the premier battery metals company in North America, maybe the world, because you have that NASDAQ listing. You can use this as a vehicle to, buy up other mining companies. Because again, the NASDAQ thing I think can get a lot more valuation than any TSX listed company. And I think it's much better to be on NASDAQ than TSX, even for mine.
Jack, I certainly agree. I see the NASDAQ listing as a huge asset for Snow Lake, talking about M&A activities, talking about how we intend to grow our lithium company. Obviously, we're looking to grow organically through the existing project we have right now, but we're also opportunistic. And if there's other lithium projects, lithium companies, as you say, I think NASDAQ gives us a platform to pursue that, perhaps with an advantage over companies listed on the TSX. So certainly something in our long range plans, but I absolutely see the NASDAQ listing as a huge advantage for Snow Lake.
Yeah, because one of the things is that you can get more mainstream investors. It's not just, mining investors. There's a crossover of tech, EV investors. That's a huge market that can come into
Sure,
the stock. I mean, I'm only speaking from like the stock kind of the supply demand perspective for the stock, not the actual business or anything else.
sure.
Because listen, I'm only interested in what's going to make the stock go up.
Sure. And look, the capital
Yeah,
pools, the investor base, the institutional shareholder base in the US dwarfs anything else on the globe, let's be honest. So I think being listed on NASDAQ gives us a window into those opportunities.
are you looking at any other additional projects, picking up any additional projects in North America, any other additional lithium projects?
That's always under consideration, but I certainly can't comment further, but it certainly is part of our long range strategy.
Okay, so that means it's something you plan. It's on the table.
Something we're actively watching. Yes, we tend to be opportunistic. And if the right opportunity comes our way, we're not afraid to chase it.
Okay, let's say obviously the stock is $1. Let's say the stock is $3, and all of a sudden you have a lot more currency
Of course,
or Nasdaq. There's a lot. I think it's the whole combination. And it's a very compelling, especially when you start building this. To be like a real snowball effect, and it could be very compelling.
sure.
Okay, so can you tell our audience? Okay, so the path forward for creating value in this, in terms of unleashing this value, closing that valuation gap. What needs to happen? Look, I think you had a timeline there, but just maybe if you can just recap in your own words, what are the milestones coming up, which could be those which could unleash more value here?
I think, as I mentioned earlier, we're starting the pre-feasibility study. Part of what will dovetail into that is our winter drill campaign. We're going to do some additional drilling this winter to test the extensions and the depth, which is say both deposits are open. We haven't closed off any of the deposits, so we hope to add some additional resource tons there. Winter is not necessarily the best time to do a grassroots exploration program. So as far as exploring the balance of the property, that'll probably come next spring, next summer. The pre-feasibility study obviously is a critical step moving towards permitting and financing for construction. As I indicated, that should be completed late spring, early summer next year. That will set us up hopefully to get our environmental assessment and permitting applications in by the end of next year. That's where we'll have to have discussions with the new government in Manitoba, but we hope they continue the policies of the prior government in streamlining permitting so we can get mines into production in Canada.
Okay, we've got a couple more questions. So Michael's asking, he says, I'm looking to invest in this company. Maybe Frank could answer me if the company is foreseeing any. Are you planning to
Consolidation,
do any
stock buyback.
buybacks? Or what are the plans in those
At
along
this
those lines?
stage, no consolidations, no buybacks. You would have seen about 2 weeks ago, we announced a flow through financing, which is actually one advantage that Canadian companies with a Canadian asset can do. So we raised $7.7 million, and that basically provides a tax write off to Canadian investors. That was resold to investors on the NASDAQ. What that does is it fully funds us for all of these programs I've been describing through the end of 2024. So we've raised capital. We're fully funded for what we've got planned for the next 15 to 18 months,
Okay. Okay. So the capital is there. Let's see here.
which I think, Jack, is important given the
Yeah. It was
current
also at a
softness
premium.
in the market. It
Yeah. Yeah.
was, and
That's
that's the
impressive.
way the structure works. So we were able to
Yeah.
sell at a premium. Yes.
Ec- Interesting. Very interesting. Okay. Is any company interested in collaborating with Snow Lake as LG did? Do you have any other partners like LG in terms of
I can't disclose names, but we're in current conversations with a number of other groups. Yes. Both on offtake perspective as well as refining capacity.
okay.
They're
Um,
unfortunately confidential discussions, so nothing is at the point where it can be publicly released.
okay, fantastic. Okay, so you got the capital, everything is in place. Okay, Frank, the last two questions I want to ask you. Okay, in terms of news flow, what kind of news flow? Our audience, they love news on a daily basis, but a couple of times a month. What kind of news flow can they expect to see from Snow Lake going forward? Like, what kind of milestones coming up near term? Are we looking at 2, 3 news releases a month? What kind of news flow?
Yeah, I think I've probably outlined the program that we're going into. We've got a winter drill program. We've got the pre-feasibility study. There's going to be some additional metallurgical testing, updated project economics, environmental work. Obviously, we will be having discussions with the new government of Manitoba as well. Other discussions that are going on in the background regard the battery metal supply chain, be it the refining capacity or offtake for the product that we're ultimately going to produce,
Okay.
and not counting on M&A activities. If something pops up there, obviously we'll announce that. But again,
Is
nothing
that
at this stage
a
that's
hint? Is that a hint?
no,
Drop.
as I indicated before, those are ongoing discussions that we're looking at.
Okay. So there's a pipeline of potential M&A
Sure.
projects. I mean, we're not saying any, but there's a pipeline. In other words, it's like you have stuff you're actively looking at always. This is
We're
okay.
always
So this
looking, yes.
okay, that's very interesting. Okay. Last question, Frank. One of the things we always like to ask CEOs on this program, in your opinion, what are the top 3 reasons, why investors should consider Snow Lake right now?
I'd say one, the NASDAQ listing. Two, the project aspects in the sense that we have an existing resource and we have a largely unexplored land package. Third question is we feel we're amongst the most undervalued lithium development companies with the most advanced lithium hard rock project in Manitoba.
Okay. Fantastic. Frank, I want to thank you for your time. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today and all the great questions. And we hope to see you back very short, maybe next week if there's news or anything else.
As I think you indicated, Snow Lake's been generally under the radar screen, but now that I'm on board, certainly the investor relations function is something that we're wanting to spend some time on, and more than happy to talk to shareholders and potential shareholders at any time.
Fantastic. Okay. Thank you, Frank. And we'll see you all on the next one.
Great. Thank you very much. Have a good day.